Picture the dog in your house.
Oh, good boy.
Wagging its tail, and licking your face, and how good that makes you feel.
Oh my God.
It's incredible. I've set my life up to be a veterinarian that deals with terminal cases from all over the world.
We've got increased rates of cancer, diabetes, you name it.
We see the worst of the worst here.
Most of the animals already had third, fourth, and fifth opinions. We are their very last hope.
I don't want to lose her.
I was working in conventional veterinary medicine. I became a very sickly person. My doctor recommended antibiotics and long-acting steroids that got me searching for answers conventional medicine didn't offer.
When somebody first brought up a holistic vet to me, I was like, so they can take grass and rub it all over my dog?
I've been criticized. Snake oil salesman, charlatan.
The holistic or alternative say, I don't want to do anything conventional. Or the conventional vet who says, absolutely no alternatives.
They're all coming in after being on drugs. They want to know how you made this dog better.
Integrative medicine works.
I'm here to destroy this guy. He just did the biggest miracle of my entire career. I actually fainted.
Whether you're a person or an animal, it doesn't matter. Being in a hospital sucks.
You're okay.
They don't understand what's happening to them. They're just trusting us.
Coming from a traditional background, I can't even conceive of this kind of success.
With cryosurgery, we actually freeze the tumor. Buys us time to work on the immune system. People say, do you think it's working? Yeah, he had 5 weeks to live 2 years ago.
He is fabulous.
If I gave up, knowing that this can be done, that would kill me.
Good boy.
It's a whole new process of thinking.
Good evening. I'm Jen Wostrom, a trustee here at the Mark Twain Library, and I am very, very pleased to be welcoming you all here tonight for part 2 of our Discovering Documentaries, featuring the incredible talent of director-producer Cindy Meehl. Tonight, we will be delving deep into the Dog Doc, but a reminder that the third and final program in this behind-the-scenes documentary series will be held on Tuesday, September 14th, when we will be joined by Cindy and Sasha Neulinger, the director and subject of the film Rewind, a groundbreaking documentary that explores the far-reaching consequences of multi-generational child sexual abuse. Just a bit of procedural housekeeping before we dig into the dogs. We will allow time for questions at the end, so just type them into the Q&A and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Do remember though, that Dr. Marty cannot diagnose virtually from afar without seeing your pet. So please refrain from sending specific medical questions about your 4-legged family members. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce Cindy Meehl, an award-winning director and producer who began her career in film in 2008 behind the camera for the documentary feature Buck. The movie premiered at the Sundance Film Festival, where it won the festival's U.S. Documentary Audience Award and was shortlisted for the 2011 Academy Awards. From there, Cindy became a sought-after executive producer, collaborating on a wide range of critically acclaimed films, including For the Birds, Trapped, Unbranded, Dogs on the Inside, Rewind, The River and the Wall, and of course, The Dog Doc. Over the course of a relatively short but very productive career, Cindy's films have won numerous awards and attended prestigious film festivals. In 2019, she had two documentaries accepted at Tribeca, including The Dog Doc. Cindy lives right here in Reading with her husband, Brian, 2 dogs, a big, beautiful cat, 2 horses, and a hen house full of chickens. Welcome, Cindy Meehl.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, especially with this guy.
Yeah. And speaking of, Dr. Marty Goldstein graduated from the Cornell University College of Veterinary Medicine in 1973 and was one of the founding members of the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association in the early 80s. He has devoted his professional life to improving the quality and extending the length of animals' lives with the intelligent integration of veterinary medicine's most effective therapies, no matter how conventional or unconventional the practice. Dr. Marty is the author of 2 books, The Nature of Animal Healing, which Marty has, and its sequel, which I have, The Spirit of Animal Healing, both available at the Mark Twain Library, which was just released this year. He also has developed a high quality food and supplement line, and you can find more about that at drmartypets.com. Dr. Marty, his wife Meg, and their 3 daughters share their lives with dogs, cats, birds, lizards, a rabbit named Pork Chop, and chickens in a very happy home in Connecticut. It is our honor to welcome Dr. Marty Goldstein to the Mark Twain Library.
And 2 horses.
Oh, and 2.
And 2 horses. And it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Welcome to the library. Okay, you 2.
Uh-oh.
I'm going to start from the beginning. Cindy, I know that you made Buck, and the genesis of that was you had a horse that you felt was in distress and needed the special care of the horse whisperer himself, Buck Brenneman. So you brought your horse out there and somehow talked Buck into making a documentary about his gift. I have a feeling the same thing happened here. You had a pet and you brought it to Dr. Marty. Is that the case?
Well, sort of. Yeah, Buck, I didn't know very long, and when I asked him, because I was so wowed by that horsemanship. But with Marty, he had saved one of my dogs. You know, I had a dying dog that somebody said, go to see Marty Goldstein. And I did. And miracle of miracles, he brought this dog not only from acting ancient at 6 years old into acting like a puppy. And so I was sold right then. So I had been going to him for quite a while. And when I made Buck, everyone kept saying, well, what are you going to do next? And Buck was my first documentary. So I hadn't thought about it. But as soon as I kept getting that question, and the only thing that would come to mind was Marty. It's like, well, Buck impressed me with what he does with horses, and Marty impresses me with what he does with dogs and animals. And no one seems to know it the way that no one seemed to know what Buck was doing. And I thought it was really important. And God, that was 2012, but it took a while before our stars aligned and the timing was right for me and for Marty. So yeah, we started that film. And when did we start that film? It was about 2016, I think, that we started filming.
Well, Marty, yours is such an interesting and unique and important story. I'm surprised you hadn't been approached before. Had you been approached before and it took Cindy's magic to convince you, or you just had never thought about it?
Well, I was never approached for an actual documentary. I was obviously approached for my first book many, many years ago. Approached for my own TV shows, but you know, I saw miracles with alternative therapies way back in the 70s and had a vision that this needed to be accepted, especially through the veterinary educational system. And I mean, I persevered. You know, the documentary really shows it through decades of hell to try to just get this way of not only treating animals, but keeping animals healthy going. So as holistic medicine started to show up here and there, so many veterinarians just jumped on the bandwagon and they weren't doing it well. So I made sure to stay the course as a conventionally practicing veterinarian, applying alternatives. So as I was approached by all these things, my automatic answer was always, no, I'm a vet. I want to do this. I want to get enough established cases to bring forth. And, you know, 10,000, 20,000 amazing cases later, I have it. I could go to any university with all the confidence in the world and say, here are the medical records. Here is this dog or this cat after $30,000 worth of therapy. And here is the same dog and the same cat 6 years later on 1/10 of the cost healthy because we're working with nature. So my long answer to that is no. I always said no until, you know, after I watched Buck, you couldn't say no to Cindy. I'd be out of my mind.
Well, good things are worth waiting for, clearly, because she told your story so beautifully. And how she told the story, and you both told the story, must have been such a journey. I mean, you can't just go to Smith Ridge with a camera and point and know which patients you're going to follow. Waffles.
Yeah.
I mean, Waffles is the arc of, in my little humble, full disclosure, people out there, I don't have a dog, but I cried twice watching the Dog Doc last night because of dear Waffles. But Waffles is the perfect kind of little guy to tell Marty's story. How did you know, Cindy? How did you find them? How did you, which dogs? Scooby, Waffles, like what was the process? How did you?
Well, as Marty will attest, first of all, he trusted us so much. And with documentaries, as a director, you need trust, you know, and you have to have that. And they gave us a key to the clinic, which I don't know if I should say that out loud, but they did. We would have to go in early, set up our cameras. And we just started out with 2 weeks solid. We filmed everything we could. Like anybody that walked through the door, we would have to go up to them. Do you mind us filming your appointment? And not everybody, it was surprising how many people said yes. I would say the majority of people, Marty, said sure. And they would often say to me, because we believe so much what this clinic does, which was really heartwarming. And I knew my experience there, but I had never really peeked behind the curtain. I didn't know the other doctors. And everyone was so great and trusted us so much. And Waffles' owner walked in. She was amazing. Lee Hardesty came in and she was so distraught. This dog was on death's door by far. And she was so distraught. And, you know, it's very sensitive to walk up to somebody when their dog is on death's door and go, excuse me, can I like put a camera on you? And she was so flummoxed by the whole thing. She was just, she didn't know if she wanted to. I don't know, you know, don't use my name. And bless her heart, it was a gut-wrenching, well, you see it in the film, that first appointment, and this poor dog, you know, do you see it in person? We were all in tears. It was a scary, scary time. But then she just kept letting us film her and film that story and go to her house. And, you know, so many people and so many stories didn't get in the film that were fantastic, with dogs that were really ill. And me and the crew were so involved with these people. Personally, you couldn't help. You see someone in need and their animal's in trouble. But Marty was just, everyone at the clinic would always say, Marty, he comes in, he just never gets down. He has the levity and he believes so much. And making people, Marty, you should talk about that. Like giving people hope is something that I think a lot of doctors and a lot of veterinarians do not do. They come in with doom and gloom, but Marty, how do you do that? Because it's a special gift.
Well, you know, intention is so big. We think that medicine is what drug to prescribe, or, you know, as we go forward, which herb to take. But, you know, if you were to take an infrared photograph of you and your pet, you wouldn't see two physical bodies. You'd see two overlapping energy fields. And it is so scientifically proven how animals have senses. You know, they could sense when a person's going to have a seizure up to 24 hours before the seizure. You know, they're now detecting bladder cancer, lung cancer, lymphoma. You know, they could detect, studies were done where they could detect their parents leaving work 15 miles away, and that's not the sense of smell. So the interrelationship, and that's what actually the spirit of animal healing is about, is looking at this dynamic on a spiritual level. Remember, your pet at home, their entire life is usually you. So as your moods change, as you exude negative energy, they're magnets for that. And like I say in this book, many times when I had a local patient come in and I had the time to take blood samples instead of someone coming in from California or Michigan, and I had time to actually, instead of pumping this animal up with 30 different supplements, 20 supplements because they were dying, I would have the time to actually figure out a program and get it to them within 2 days when I get the blood results back. But half of our consult is to go through what disease is, explain why nature creates disease, and then go over before and after cases. And 95% of the people that have come to us after they see these before and after cases, they walk in doom and gloom and they leave happy. And oh, I have hope for the first time. And then they call 2 days later for the results on their pet. Didn't start anything. And my first question is, how's she doing today? She's actually better. I've heard that hundreds and hundreds of times, not a coincidence. So by establishing a viewpoint of hope, you're actually helping. It's not about you feeling better. It actually is part of the healing process.
That was 100% the case with Mulligan, right? Little Mulligan.
Mulligan and Scooby. And it's true. And I once wrote a national article for a big magazine, I forget what it was, called Hope Precedes Healing. Do you know how many animals are euthanized in the United States because a veterinarian says, I'm sorry, this is hopeless? Millions.
Yeah.
And they'll call Smith Ridge. They don't know why. Like someone told Cindy to call me. And they know their animal's going to die, but they're reaching for straws. And when we give them hope, it gives them permission to take it to the next level, because a hopeless prognosis. New York Times wrote an amazing article how stealing hope in the human field, stealing hope from patients is now considered malpractice. It takes their life away. I'm sorry, you're going to die. Oh, thank you. So it's very important to establish hope. And I'll tell you why I do it and why it's so easy to me. When you've seen the tens of thousands of cases we've turned around over the years, you become confident with hope. That's all I got to say.
Well, we saw them in your basement in the movie. The boxes.
Oh, it's reams.
Yeah. Well, hope was going back to Waffles, because I got to. You gave Waffles' mom and Waffles' dad, I suppose, hope with your vitamin C IV. I mean, that and then when they figured out the fungus thing. But you're a pioneer in vitamin C treatment in pets, yes? Is it something that is catching on, or is it still not thought of? Because you watched it work. I watched it work in the movie, and I'm thinking, why don't all vets do this?
Yeah, why don't all vets do a lot of things I want them to do that I've been screaming about for the last 50 years? Vitamin C, I'm probably the pioneer of its application in veterinary medicine. Cindy can attest to how well it works in humans. It's simply amazing. To say that I've treated tens of thousands of animals since the 70s with intravenous vitamin C is not an exaggeration. And
what does it actually do?
So many things. It oxygenates the body. It destroys cancer cells without harming normal cells. It enhances collagen repair. And it could be maybe, or one of the most effective treatments for treating and knocking out COVID. Proven in NIH studies out of Shanghai, and Cindy and I have a very dear friend that is presenting, to the NIH cases that he's treated at a university hospital in Philadelphia, where these COVID patients were hospitalized respirator, and he was getting them better, maybe even discharged, many of them within several days. Because, we're talking about levels of vitamin C, Linus Pauling levels, where, you could take 5,000-6,000 milligrams or 5 or 6 grams of vitamin C orally. We're talking about intravenously 50, 80, 100 grams of vitamin C in less than 8 hours. And it targets disease cells, it kills viruses, it kills cancer, it leaves the body quickly, and it hardly, that I've seen in thousands of cases, has any side effects. Plus there are other conditions. The cancer patients we treated, all of a sudden, her arthritis symptoms are gone. Her skin cleared up. So I don't know why it's not tremendously accepted. Maybe veterinary medicine needs to watch the Dog Doc.
I think, but I know that in that trial of our friends, they were only doing, it was like, I think 10, 20, and 30 or 20, 30, and 40 grams in 3 days. And they walked out of the hospital. These are people that were to be put on ventilators, and it was quite amazing. So
and the NIH studies, and New York Post ran an article on a doctor in New York City when COVID first hit that was actually using IV vitamin C, very successful. He was giving doses of 3 grams to people. That is tremendously underdosed, and it was still working.
It has to be the IV, right, Marty? It's not like the pills.
To get the doses that are really clinically effective, it's got to be IV, because if you take those doses orally, it'll just burn out the intestine. Severe diarrhea.
I see. All right. Well, we could talk about vitamin C all night long, and
absolutely.
I feel like I need some right now. But I want to get back to Waffles and Scooby and Mulligan. The stories are so rich, and like you said, you could have been there with cameras for months and pulled it together in a million different ways. But it ended up being the beautiful story that it was. Obviously, because of your directorial talent, but also your friend Steve Hefner, the editor, who needed to pull animals and people and tears and joy and Marty and scholarship and music and all of that together. And for those of us watching, Cindy lost Steve Hefner to cancer just a few weeks ago, which is terribly, terribly sad, but only at the age of 55. So we're very sorry about that, Cindy. But I wanted to mention his name tonight, obviously, because he was so important to the film. And if you had to describe how Steve made it special, it's probably a hard question for you, but what would you say about Steve in the movie?
Oh my God, I'm gonna try not to cry. He this was such a complex film to edit because there was over 300 hours of footage, and we had so many great stories, and to try to pick them and make it into a storyline. Documentary editing, in my personal opinion, is much harder than a narrative film because you don't have a script to go by. You don't say, here's scene 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's put that together. You have all this to pick from. You could make a million different movies out of this much footage. And he hung in there. I mean, I think we spent a year editing this film, and he was really into every aspect of it. And he started out really not knowing that much about it and probably being a little skeptical about this whole thing. And by, I'd say, a third of the way into it, he was so into it. He's like, this is the most important film I've ever worked on. I love it so much. I've learned so much. He had a dog that was not well at the time himself. So it was amazing just the conversations we had. And for someone that didn't know anything about this and to sit there and watch all this footage and see these case after case that we had filmed. I mean, we did have amazing footage. he just, it really made him a believer. And then it was just so tragic to lose him because he's such a talented editor. And, you know, he's edited several films, but I'm happy that this will be part of his legacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very beautiful film in a lot of ways. I mean, this obviously the message is very important. But it's when you watch it, it's the roller coaster ride that you and Steve and everybody take the viewer on. It's unforgettable. So the three, again, don't have a dog, so I learned a lot, Marty. That I learned that the three, not going to say tricks of the trade, but that did just roll off my tongue, are the cryosurgery, the IV vitamin C, and the MagnaWave.
Yes.
You cannot find those in regular veterinary offices. You can only find those three obviously really powerful ways of bringing treatment. You can only find those in holistic alternative veterinary offices today?
No, I mean, MagnaWave to start is catching on. I mean, the original technology was created by Tesla, you know, and it comes out of the NASA space program. So it is very highly accepted medical therapy. And, you know, it's actually PEMF, pulsed electromagnetic frequency therapy. And the only PEMF device right now that has FDA approval is a small battery and coil for like $300-400. And they're actually using it at the largest veterinary hospital in the United States, the Animal Medical Center. So it is catching on.
Okay.
Cryosurgery is being performed by maybe 8 to 10% of the veterinarians in the United States, but nowhere to the extent you'll see in the Dog Doc. They'll have little cans of nitrous oxide with a little tip, and they'll spray little skin lesions, little tumors. You're not going to see it like you saw with Scooby. You know, that's something my brother and I have been doing since the 70s. And what was the other one? Oh, IV vitamin C. Yeah. Vitamin C, it is slowly but surely catching on. You know why this stuff is going to catch on? Because it works. I started my training in acupuncture in 1975. And that's when my condemnation in my profession started. Goldstein is sticking needles in animals. What happened to him as a veterinarian? I heard that every time I stopped going to conferences because how much I was getting ridiculed. Now I think it's 63 or 68% of the veterinary colleges in the United States embrace the practice of acupuncture and actually teach it or send their interns off to get residencies in acupuncture. So now these associates that criticize me so much come to me at the meetings and say, oh my God, you were so far ahead of your time. And my answer is, acupuncture has been here 3,000 to 5,000 years. I'm not ahead of my time. I'm just 30 years less behind than you. And it's going to happen with IV vitamin C. You know, it's been done since the 1800s. Cryosurgery was done in Germany in the 1800s. So it's just a matter of all of this catching on. You know, I got to share this. Cindy sent me out to the Boulder Film Festival, which was one of the highlights of my life with the Dog Doc. And it was so well accepted there. Boulder is this incredible town that I was actually going to be a veterinarian in. I was actually had my mail forwarded to Denver, and I was going to live with my friend Steve and get a practice in Boulder in the 70s. So I had this huge affinity. And the premier documentary that featured for the entire festival was the documentary about the band. Oh. And Robbie Robinson was there doing a Q&A to the entire festival at the end. And it was so breathtaking. And he said a line that was so emphatic that it's in the spirit of animal healing. Because when they played with Bob Dylan and Dylan switched to electric music, they were ridiculed around the world. When they gave concerts, tomatoes were being thrown on the stage and pies. It was horrible what happened. And Robbie Robertson said it just so well. He said, we were onto something, but the rest of the world just had to catch up.
Yeah.
Well, okay, Bob Dylan of dogs.
I mean, it was. So I'm watching my entire profession. So my license was verbally threatened in 1978 for treating arthritic dogs with glucosamine sulfate. Now they sell like $250 million a year in veterinary medicine. It's just a matter of time. And it's a film like the Dog Doc that put it together. I haven't had one veterinarian watch that movie and contact me and say, right on, that was great. Not one.
Well, the other thing I wanted to say is that on our Facebook for the Dog Doc, there's 2 different videos about MagnaWave that explains it better. So if anyone is going, well, what is this MagnaWave thing? Like, go to the Dog Doc Facebook and friend us. And then you can watch, one is on horses, one is on dogs. And also just today, we posted the entire lecture. At the end of the movie, you see a snippet of the lecture that Marty does at the Cornell Vet School. And so we had so many people want to see, like, where's the rest of the lecture? So we edited it down into half an hour, and it's also posted on the Dog Doc Facebook. So if people want more of this kind of information of, what is this about? What's integrative medicine for dogs? They should definitely check out our Facebook, and they can learn a lot of things. The other thing is that oh my God, what is the other thing I was thinking about?
Don't worry, it'll come back to you.
It'll come back to me. Go ahead. Anyway, yeah, but it's definitely worth watching, and you could pick up a lot of stuff.
So Marty, when you were one of the first people to start the American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association in the early 80s, it was just you and a couple of guys, right? Now, how big is it? And that's where people should go if they want to find a vet that
Yes, it's the ahvma.org is the #1 reference to find a listing of the integratively functioning veterinarians in North America, their state, their city, sometimes they're even their town, and the modalities they practice. So, it's well over 1,000, veterinary members now, plus technicians. I mean, it's great. It was actually the guy that really started the society. His name is Carvel Tiekert from Maryland. He came up to visit my brother and me way back when we started to sell and embrace and practice the first real commercial health food for dogs. It was called Cornucopia. And Carvel drove up from Maryland to visit my brother and me. And my brother and I, we were very busy practitioners at that time. And we were hanging out in our room, just, talking about what we're going to do. And just kidding around, I went to Carvel and I said, what we need is a holistic society, but my brother and I are too busy. So why don't you go create one? Totally kidding. And he did. It's funny that the holistic society was created by a man named Carvel. But
it is the way people can find alternative vet, because a lot of people say, well, we can't go all the way to New York or wherever, because Marty's in South Salem, New York. So people that are in California or Texas or Washington State, they can look at AHVMA, American Holistic Veterinary Medical Association, right?
.org.
Right.
.org.
.org. Yeah.
.org.
.org.
Not .com.
Taking us back to the movie, taking us back to a particular scene, taking us back to the pin drawer, Marty. The pin drawer. If anyone did not watch the movie and you're here tonight, please watch the movie. But you will notice that in every scene you see Marty, and tonight, Marty wears
That's the pin Cindy gave me.
pins. Pins. Marty must have, I mean, in the scene in the movie, he pulls out a drawer and what do you have? 60, 70 pins. And
Oh, way more than 60.
Way more. All right. Well, they look very neatly organized.
Cindy will attest to that.
I'm feeling a cinematographer might have been involved in that particular shot.
Look at the little cat hanging on the swing. So it's not only the dog, Doc. We love cats too.
Okay. Well, can you tell us about the pin thing? When did that start? Out in Boulder?
Well, no. Actually, I had a button collection when I was a student for my 8 years at Cornell. I was known for my buttons. I still have a whole bunch of them. But there's one button I wore every day, which was kind of a prelude to what I was going to become. And you know what that button? I have these big buttons with balloons, psychedelic buttons. You know, that was the Woodstock era. I had them all. But there was one button I wore every day. It was this big. And you know what it said? Question authority. And I did. It was not easy taking the path I chose, but I did it because I know it was true. But I was questioning the authority of conventional medicine for decades. And then all of a sudden it turned into pins. And then once rumor got out, every birthday, every Christmas, every Father's Day, clients, pins, friends, pins, blah, blah, blah. These are some that weren't in there that I recently got. Look how cute these pins are. And then I do a lot of maple syrup collection and processing myself. I just got a solid gold maple leaf and one more for Cindy and me because we love these guys. My chicken pin.
Yay, chickens.
Thank you very much, Marty, for bringing the pins into the Mark Twain Library program.
A great scene in the documentary, though. It brings a lot of laughs because it's just like, whoa, what are you kidding me?
It is. Well, the documentary shows us the transitioning from how you graduated from Cornell with probably a rather Western degree in medicine, but then your own health began to suffer. And that's when you began to explore, obviously, acupuncture, but also the power of supplements. Do you remember at all the first pivot when you said, I think I can do this on a dog or a cat?
Oh, absolutely.
Do you?
I was always fat, believe it or not. My nickname was Porky. I couldn't see my feet when I looked down.
Really?
And I had degenerative, genetically based conditions that the males on my mother's side of the family all had. Arthritis, I had birthmarks growing on my body, overweight, male pattern baldness. I should, every male, they would, by 30, they were totally bald. I was losing my hair rapidly. So it was vanity and fear that made me search for these alternatives. And when I started to eat brown rice, that was it. I got turned on to Far East diets and I lost 20 pounds in about 8 or 9 days and my arthritis pain went away. My brother, who was my partner then, veterinarian, he got onto it too. And then he said, oh my God, you've been fat all your life and all of a sudden you lost all this weight. He started to do it. So the common sense was we made a real diet for his dog, Lee, a golden retriever that had hip dysplasia, was severely arthritic, and had allergies so bad that every allergy season, all 4 legs were bandaged. And we took Lee off the semi-moist foods, which the documentary depicts so well, which is just chemicalized carcinogen stuff. There's no food in there. And we started to cook for him. Brown rice, beef, spinach, and this and that. All of a sudden his allergies almost went away and he started to run like a puppy. And it was like, whoa, this ain't tough. Healing is not, disease can be combated and even prevented. And then it was one by one. I started to share this with clients of mine for their pet, and they said, yeah, we'll try it. And 3 days later, they come back and said, oh my God, stop shaking, running around. So that was the advent.
Well, there are a lot of, not a lot, but there's some poignant stories just like that in the Dog Doc. Marty, how much input did you have on the stories that Cindy chose to tell, and vice versa? Waffles.
Well, it was, first of all, Steve, genius. Obviously, I have, and I present to colleges, universities, some startling cases that are mind-blowing. But, Cindy and I agreed, made a decision not to take any of the back cases, but to start fresh with a new case. And you don't know how they're going to turn out. So
right.
I didn't think we really retrieved as many of the miracle cases over 3 years that I would have liked to. And some cases came in that we didn't film that were miraculous, but they didn't have time to film. So I would say the answer to that question was Steve Hefner.
I was just wondering if if Cindy wasn't planning on shooting on a day, and you would call and say, there's this dog Petey here or something.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, we did that. But I'll tell you one thing. When we chose to film Scooby, and especially Mulligan,
right.
Mulligan had a disease that, in my experience, once it hits by that dog's young age, that dog has months to live. So, and you saw in the documentary, when I asked Mulligan's mom, did they use the term renal dysplasia, which was at Cornell University? And she said yes, and went, ooh, because renal dysplasia is a fatal disease. Mulligan was a miracle beyond miracle, but we will not ever stop because a poor prognosis. We will never do that. So even though I knew Mulligan, the chances of turning Mulligan around and getting that amazing, vibrant life was so slim, we still went for it. And guess what? It worked.
And you did it with supplements.
So, yeah, supplements. We had IV vitamin C as a back burner. We never needed it.
No, it didn't.
Responded dramatically.
Right. And Joni, his mom, is the one that said, this is so simple. I don't know why it hasn't caught on.
Hello.
She also commented on your clothing, by the way.
Yes, she did. Oh my
She's a
goodness.
trip.
But with filming these things, we would often have, people don't realize there would be 7 of us. There'd be a crew in the kitchen where most, unfortunately, a lot of your staff were having a hard time fitting in there to eat. And, we'd be calling up people and we'd try to schedule days. But if it was a last minute thing, like, oh my goodness, Waffle's sick today, we would either scramble to get somebody out of New York, or I had Christian Chapman here who was in Easton often, and I would call him up, and he was great. He shot a lot of the movie, but but the main thing with it's one thing if you have the shot on camera, but you have to have a sound, and sound is huge. And in our world, it's like no sound, no film. It's also show, don't tell. So even though he had a lot of great old cases, and you see them peppered in the movie, but you have to sort of feel like you're there, that you're in the moment, this is real. And we couldn't just say, yeah, here's some pictures and that dog was sick and then it's better. Like, it's just not the same as feeling like you're really taking a journey with an owner.
Well, you literally,
parent,
you took the journey with Waffles. Somehow you guys managed to be there that day that he needed a blood transfusion. And all of a sudden the camera's in the car with her driving to Newtown, Connecticut, because that's where the blood was. I mean, the fact that you were there, Cindy, did you say we're going? I mean, what was that day like?
Every day was nail biting. I don't think anybody will realize how emotional everything was with this film, because you would just drop everything and you would scramble to get people there and get a crew and have at least enough people to get the shot. And also you're living through with someone that now you've become close to, or that you really respect and love, and you love the dog, and you see, we're all right there with, our heart is just in our throats. It's very difficult. You can't take your emotion out of this, when you're filming. You really don't. That's why the trust is important. That's why you have to care. And I think people knew that I cared in spades about this subject, these doctors, these dogs, these owners. I cared so much, that it takes its toll, honestly.
Well,
but I loved every minute of it. I really did. But I have to say, it was some of the most exhausting 3 years of my life. And then I decided to do Rewind at the same time, but I was only producing that. I was directing is very different from producing. But yeah, it was such a good, somebody presented it to me. I was like, I couldn't turn that down. So that's what was crazy, is like, I was, producing that on the side. So.
Okay, note to people watching, that is the third part of this Discovery documentary series. That's on September 12th. That is an emotional one. We won't give too much away because we're going to still stick with the Dog Doc. But yeah, those two merging in your life together must have had some very difficult days. Marty.
It was, but it was, it was great. It was so great.
Cindy called Marty the most positive man she's ever met, and dealing with cases that are hopeless when they walk through the door. But what you've told us about hope, Marty, is how you obviously stay positive. Cindy, I have a feeling going home to Bell and Wagner and Bosley is how you stay positive. Your own four-legged family. Otherwise,
Brian. I have to throw
Brian.
Too. Yeah.
Her husband Brian.
The two-legged one.
Yeah. Well, it all of that comes through in this film, which is what makes it. You learn a lot. Your eyes are brought wide open. About integrative medicine for humans and our four-legged ones. But you're taken on a ride with the Dog Doc, that's for sure. I gotta, in the remaining moments, I gotta shout out to your wife, Meg, Marty, because she's a great character in this documentary. She's like your straight man, but she helped you with the lecture and the scene where you're looking at the stuff. Cindy, whoever's behind the camera looking at the stuff.
It was great.
But also in the clinic, she's right there. She's carrying these heavy, I'm gonna guess you guys met on the job. Yeah, can you give us a little backstory about?
Yeah, she did come to work with me. She was a student at UConn on a student visa. Her parents live in New Canaan, but her father is the retired president of Hitachi Medical. That's how they came over to the United States. And then she was so fascinated by Smith Ridge, she didn't want to go back to UConn. And eventually, the rest is history.
So
but she's great. I mean, what's amazing about her is, I've had a lot of financial problems over the years because I never knew anything about business. In the early days, it was very hard to charge for alternatives because it wasn't accepted medicine. And if you charged, the regular prices and an animal didn't do well, every veterinarian has an animal that doesn't do well, I could lose my license. They could sue me and this and that. So, I always never charge much. So, it's been a roller coaster financially. You saw the shack that we worked out of in the documentary.
Yep, you called it the shack.
Our x-ray room was our bathroom, our x-ray developing room. So, and when push came to shove, because Meg worked every single department, technician, radiology, the laboratory, this one, that one. And then all of a sudden, when things got bad, she took over the management of the hospital and knew every single position And the hospital never, even with professional business people that I hired, never did as good as when Meg ran it.
Wow.
So hats off to her. Right, Sid?
She's great.
Yeah, she's
I mean,
great.
And I love her personally too, because she's just a wonderful person. And she keeps him straight, you know, she keeps.
She definitely does. And now we foster kittens. We have 2 kittens upstairs. You know, she works, she goes once or twice a week as a volunteer technician to the Danbury Animal Welfare Society, DAWS.
Mhm.
And there's not 1 minute that foster kittens are not in our house, in the bathroom, in the bonus room, and this and that. Sometimes litters here, litters there. You know, she brings them home almost dead,
Oh,
a week and a half old, and she
bringing them
nurses
to the right
them
place.
back. And then we adopt them out. So yeah, animal, like I said in the movies, animals have more of an affinity for her than anyone I've ever met. Even my own dogs, they
Yeah.
take to her, not me.
Well, you can tell. You can
Yeah.
tell that the scene where you're every time she's in a scene with your animals at home, they're jumping on her.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I noticed it. I don't know if anybody else noticed it, but Marty, at the time when the documentary was being filmed, it looked like a 100% female business model. I mean, I mentioned this to Cindy, and she's like, "No, there were some guy techs, but it really looks like it was Marty and a bunch of really, really smart, dedicated ladies at Smith Ridge."
Well, what's interesting is when I went to Cornell Vet School, it was a student class of 60, 58 males, limited to 2 females. And that was the rule. So if you were a female and wanted to get into Cornell University, you had almost no chance because they would only accept 2 a year. Do you know where it's at now? 75 to 90% female.
Good.
So the whole profession, and why my hope is in this profession, has shifted from the male to the female heart. And that's why we're getting accepted. That's why alternatives are coming in, because it's happening.
Yeah.
So, and that's why, you know, the males in my practice that come into work, they're usually horrible.
Well, the female heart.
That's not true.
All of those women in all of the roles, from the anesthesiologist to the one scheduling, everybody's heart was right there, front and center. In the time we have remaining, I have a question from a viewer, and I want to make sure you have enough time to answer it, because I have a feeling a lot of people want to hear this. The question is, do indoor cats need rabies shots every year? And
no animal needs a rabies shot every year, because it's governmentally approved that the minimum duration of protection from a rabies vaccine is 3 years. So in my opinion, that is malpractice. There is something called the Rabies Challenge Fund that replicated a study done in France on dogs, where they standardly vaccinated dogs up to 1 year of age. And they stayed 100% protected for 8 years with challenge to live rabies virus. The Rabies Challenge Fund replicated that study, only went 5 years because the government ran out of live rabies virus, and they've published the data that the minimum duration of protection from a rabies vaccine standardly given when young is 5 years. So, and you know, the side effects of the rabies vaccine, especially in the cats from the rabies vaccine grow a tumor called the feline rabies vaccine induced sarcoma. And it is literally fatal without tremendous disfiguring surgery. So vaccinating indoor cats, in my opinion, especially after they've been standardly vaccinated when they're young, is an insanity. Vaccinating them every year is 100% malpractice. Let me stop my hands more.
Okay.
Cindy, you could add into this too.
Yeah, Cindy, why don't you, because I know the movie points out that a regular vet will give a rabies vaccine to a dog, whether it's a Chihuahua or a Great Dane, same amount.
That's true. That is true. And we often did see, I'm sorry, my dogs are scratching at my door and making noise. So if you hear that sound, that's my dogs. No, if you get the DVD, there's extras in there, and there's a whole rabies story about a puppy that did have some vaccine damage from rabies. And here again, you need to have the rabies. We would never say do not give rabies shots to dogs. It's absolutely imperative that you do. But when there's a reaction, the vitamin C saved that dog. And there's a really great story that didn't make the movie, but it made the extras. They're at the door, aren't they?
Yes. The
Anyway.
team at the Mark Twain Library here would like to meet the dogs.
Here it is. Here
we go. I thought it was Brian.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
There's Brian. Brian's waving.
Do it. Is he coming? We just want people to vaccinate responsibly, and the dogs need vaccinations, but dogs are the most over-vaccinated animal on the planet because they just religiously give them a slew of them every year. And as Marty often says, when was your last polio shot? Like, you don't need them all every year. And it's very confusing for people, and they trust their vet, and the vet's like, well, let's just make sure, and we are not vet shaming, because there's amazing vets out there, but it's just that people need to get a little bit educated. And one of the most important words they can learn is titer. Like, if you think, or your vet thinks they need a parvo shot and they've already been vaccinated as puppies, titer them. And that will tell you if they're covered or not. And my dogs, I've had a 10-year-old, or maybe she was 11-year-old dog that we had a puppy coming in. So we thought, well, we better titer to see. She was going to Marty, and she hadn't had distemper parvo shot in, I don't know, at least 8 years. And she's perfectly covered, had more than enough antibodies, so she didn't need the shot. But it was good that you have a titer. You draw blood, you test for antibodies, but it's a really good tool, if you're wondering, and maybe your dog's got allergies and isn't that healthy, or there's something wrong. It's not the time to vaccinate. You want to vaccinate healthy animals. And so it's a great thing to do, to titer and just make sure that they have enough coverage. Is that right? I'm telling them medical advice. It's like, oh, that's his job.
When I was a senior at Cornell Vet School, I lived in a condo in Ithaca, and there was a gentleman, I lived above me, Fred Scott. Fred Scott became, and still is, the head of virology at the Cornell Vet School. And he was my neighbor. We became good friends. He did an entire study where he gave litters of kittens standardly vaccinated for the feline distemper, which is called panleukopenia. And he did it standardly as kittens at 1 year of age. And then he stopped, and he challenged all the litters with live distemper virus. And the study went on for like 10 or 12 years. And he reported in the Journal of the American Veterinary Medical Association, which is, the Bible, his study that the minimum duration of protection from standard vaccinations when they're up to 1 year of age was 7 years up to a lifetime. So if that is medically documented at Cornell University, why are vets vaccinating cats every 3 years and many every 2 or 1 year with distemper? My mission is to bring out, like I said in the documentary, I'm not anti-vaccine, I'm pro-sanity. It's insane to vaccinate a cat every year or every 3 years when Cornell University is showing that the minimum protection, like you with polio, you're getting it every 3 years or 5 years. So there is a level of insanity in standardized veterinary medicine that something like the documentary has to serve as a wake-up call, because animals are getting harmed.
Well, this conversation has been a wake-up call. This film should be seen by everyone, dog owners, and actually the Hollywood Reporter review on this film said that very same thing. You don't have to own a pet to see this film and get something very, very important about integrative medicine from it. So The Mark Twain Library offers the Dog Doc in Blu-ray and regular DVD, but you can also download it for free via our Hoopla service. We have the Spirit of Animal Healing on our shelves. I thank you both very, very much. This has been fascinating for all. And I'm going to tee you guys up because I think Marty's doing it again tomorrow.
Thursday.
I'll let you do a plug.
It's Wednesday. Don't say Thursday. It's tomorrow.
Oh, tee is up. I thought golfing.
Oh, no. Not he does golf on the brain. Tomorrow, Marty is doing a Facebook Live with the famous Rodney Habib, who is the founder of Planet Paws, which everyone should be following on Facebook, and the actress Maggie Q, who is also an amazing animal activist and environmentalist, and she has saved more animals single-handedly than most people I know, for sure. I mean, and she's a friend of Marty's. So the three of them are going to mix it up about why veterinarians are now recommending raw food. And I think a lot of people are confused about raw food. So if you can't see it at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow, it will live on the Dog Doc Facebook after that. So please tune in live or watch it later when you have time. If you're interested in feeding raw food to your dog or cat, which I actually do for both of mine. So Marty, you want to add to that? Rodney's a hoot.
Oh, Rodney, yeah, and it's just going to be great. It, you know, instead of 20 minutes, it should be like 3 hours and 20 minutes. But it's going to be 20 minutes. We'll get it in.
Well, this was a fascinating hour. So thank you both. I want to sign off on behalf of the Mark Twain Library with lots and lots of hearty thanks. Come back, everyone, on September 12th for the third and final installation of Discovering Documentaries. Cindy Meehl, Dr. Marty Goldstein, thank you all.
Thank you. It was great. Loved it.
Having us.
Thanks.